Cover Killer Nation's favorite albums, we talked about Rush and the bands in which they influenced. However, this week we have to do something a little different because Rush won Music Madness 2015. Porcupine Tree won the vote for a discography review that was on the outside looking in. That was something that was a hidden surprise that's, well, it's a long time coming, believe me. This is something that has needed to happen for years. We're not here to talk about Porcupine Tree and the artists in which they influenced in this week's episode. We're instead here to talk about the many faces of the product's mastermind, which is Steven Wilson. Steven Wilson is a tremendous, tremendous musician that has been at the forefront of various bands that span various styles of music. He is not a man who just principally stays within the realm of progressive rock. He has various, I guess you could say, various sides to himself, almost a schizophrenic way of showcasing all of his musical influences and musical drives. So we need to talk about 9 of them. There are many different hats, so let's get started. First of all, we have Fear of a Blank Planet from Porcupine Tree. Now, this is the project that Steven Wilson is best known for, and this is probably one of the better-known latter-day albums from this band. Most people will know In Absentia, either that or maybe Deadwing, because they gained a lot of exposure for being heavier than the work that he had done beforehand with the band. Beforehand, there were a lot of exhibits of psychedelic rock, and a lot of exhibits of some electronic music that was thrown in there, even some people claiming some Britpop, which I can kind of see, just a little tiny teeny bit, but not really. I like Fear of a Blank Planet by this group principally because it has just a lot of charm to it. It has a fantastic idea of itself, and it's represented so damn well. This is an album that does not need much in the way of introduction whenever it comes to its overall body of work. Anesthetize, which is the centerpiece of this album, alone is worth the price of admission. But then we get to some of his outside projects, such as No Man with their album Flowermouth, with the song Angel Caught in the Beauty Trap, is the one that always will come to my mind, principally because this is art rock bliss that has some prog rock charm, that also has some trip-hop flavor. It's a very strange trinity of influences that really show up within this project. And once again, I have to go back to the song title that I mentioned right at the opening, Angel Caught in the Beauty Trap. This is a near 10-minute long excursion that is an absolute wonder to behold. This is a terrific track, one that really showcases all of the different levels of talent, all of the different levels of emotion, and the myriad of style that is really encapsulated within the No Man project, the No Man banner. It's a band that's morphed a little bit throughout the years. It's one that I do not believe is currently active. However, it's one that probably could get resurrected at just about any time. But then we get to some of the stranger ideas within the Steven Wilson music verse, such as the incredible expanding Mindfuck. Yes, that's the name of the band, or IEM for short. The album specifically is IEM Have Come for Your Children. And while we're in the same token, while we're talking in the same breath, let's talk about Bass Communion with their album Ghosts on Magnetic Tape. This is a little bit more in the way of ambient work. This is a little bit more closely associated with either drone or with kind of just cinematic or cinescapes, as some people may call it. Sonoscapes. It was the word that was used in Imaginary Sonoscapes by Psy back in the early part of the 2000s, I believe it was. However, the incredible expanding Mindfuck has a little bit more of the route towards psychedelic rock, and think very much of furthering the process of Porcupine Tree's Voyage 34 album, and you will kind of understand what the incredible expanding Mindfuck is kind of all about, only adding a little bit more of that ambient twist, whereas Bass Communion is just flat-out ambient. There's a lot of influence in some of these projects from krautrock. There's a lot of movie soundtracks that you can hear, especially in Bass Communion. Some people have compared it to the works of a David Lynch movie or the popular series Twin Peaks, which is getting resurrected. And the music just has kind of this haunting idea and appeal to it, and it's got this very unsettling or uneasy ideal to it, whereas with the incredible expanding Mindfuck, that psychedelic rock idea really just makes you feel like your ears are on drugs. And it's actually a really cool feeling. It can be a bit discombobulated. It can seem a bit out of control at times, but this is all part of the compositional structure for one, and these are all really just experiments in sound. This is a gentleman who is literally just tinkering with the idea of sound, and that's a lofty endeavor in and of itself, considering sound itself can never truly be completely conquered. But then you could talk about something softer, something that may even have a distinction within pop somewhat. More so the European idea of the word pop, not the American idea, where, you know, there's got to be scantily clad people that are singing synthetic songs that has absolutely no soul and is delivered and done by people named Beyonce. No, we're talking more about maybe prog pop or alternative pop. We're talking about Blackfield. We're talking about Steven Wilson's collaboration with Aviv Geffen, and this is just beautiful work. This shows the ability of Steve to collaborate with somebody and create something that has a very soft melodic edge to it, but also has a very real feeling to it. This is one that almost feels like an experiment with emotion and an experiment in trying to craft something that has a little bit more simplicity to it, has a little bit more direction to it, and it doesn't have that same free-form calamity attached to it, such as the IEM work or the Bass Communion work. Definitely a great first album, a great first taste of Blackfield is their debut, and it's one that's continued with, you know, albums such as Blackfield 2 or Welcome to My DNA, and Blackfield 4, of course, was an exceptional album that we reviewed here on this channel. So you can check out that review and get a little bit better of an idea of what this band is all about. But then we talk about what Steve Wilson has done whenever he is not within the confines of the band, whenever he's instead, you know, doing production. We talk about Opeth. We talk about his work with Blackwater Park and some of the albums that have been delivered by the group ever since. And this collaboration has certainly led to just phenomenal things. Blackwater Park is considered to be a marvelous achievement for the band. It's still the Opeth album that is most often cited as people's favorites, even though I think Ghost Reveries is pretty up there. I mean, this is probably a neck-and-neck battle between both of those two albums. But then you also realize that Steven Wilson did some background vocals on a track, Death Whispered a Lullaby, on Damnation. And his collaboration and friendship with Mike has actually led to Storm Corrosion, which was an album that we spoke about a couple of years ago, which was their collective work. And for everybody who was expecting Porcupine Tree meets Opeth to be this strange and beautiful idea, what they actually got was a haunting, very cerebral, very moving piece of music that definitely left a varied taste in a lot of people's mouths. It was one that was not necessarily universally beloved. This was one that had a completely different musical vision to it than I think what a lot of people had in mind. I believe that this was all a bunch of hype from people that wanted that match made in heaven idea to go the way they wanted it to, as opposed to how Mike and Steve wanted it to go. And I really liked their vision. I think their vision has enough charm while also having enough real uneasy melancholy to it in order to really craft just something beautiful. I still go back to this one pretty often and just kind of worship its strangeness. It's a really cool album. But then, you know, he also was one of the producers for the Neverending Way of OrwarriOR by Orphaned Land. Orphaned Land are kind of these unsung heroes of the Middle East whenever it comes to heavy metal, really bringing a lot of recognition, not to mention standing up for a lot of different causes, and their albums are just really, really great. These are albums that showcase so many different hats of musical talent and so many different formulas and functions that really come together to beautifully craft just spellbinding work. I mean, if you take a look at like Mabul, for example, that's just a tremendous album, and then by the time we get to the Neverending Way of OrwarriOR, it's been 7 years or so, however long it was, because they're fighting for what they believe and spent time in prison. But Steven at the producer's helm certainly elevated the sound to even higher levels, and that's kind of what he does. He's done a lot of remasters for groups such as King Crimson as well. First time they've ever been referenced on this channel, I think. And those remasters sound just as big and bombastic and insane as the originals did whenever they were cut back in the late 1960s, early 1970s. He's really just got a gift. But then we talk finally about his solo work, and we've talked about every single one of his solo works on this channel, I believe, with the exception of his very first one. And I'm not talking about his original tapes that he was putting out with a cover and an original. I'm talking about Insurgentes. I'm talking about the very first official Steven Wilson solo album release under that banner. And man, I'll tell you, there's been an evolution that has happened within Steven Wilson's own career. You know, we just got the Hand Cannot Erase this year, which has been a perfect 10 on this channel. Unbelievable album, but this is the one that started it all. This is the one that predated Grace for Drowning and really showcases his abilities to kind of shut off all of those different sides of his brain and focus in on the project that he wants to really be a part of and pour his heart and soul into. Because this is one that has a lot of different hats to it. It's one that showcases a lot of his different sides beautifully. Steven Wilson is a Renaissance man as far as I'm concerned, and I know that's one man's opinion, but he's a gentleman that really embodies the idea that music is an ever-shifting desert. It's one where you can find inspiration from one idea one day, but then a week or a year later, find inspiration from a completely different direction or a completely different genre at times. This is not something where we should stick within just our safety zone. We could actually be doing even better things within another construct. And Steven's work has certainly showcased that. I invite you to check out all of his work from all of his different bands, and I'm sure that I have left things out, principally because I could talk about this work for days and not be bored. If you like talking about music, I recommend subscribing. I hope that you will do that. I thank you very, very much. And if you have a suggestion for the next episode of Cover Killer Nation's favorite albums, or the next episode of 10 Awesome Songs, leave it in the comments below, and we will see you guys on Friday for 10 Awesome Songs, episode number 6. Stick around because you're not going to want to miss it. Whew. I'm going to be listening to Steve all day, so I'll see you later.